there, and welcome to the UkeStuff channel, and welcome to this full UkeGuide review of the KoAloha Opio long neck soprano ukulele. Now, about this instrument, I did buy it used, so the strings that are on it, I'm pretty sure are from November of 2018 when this ukulele was built. So when we get to sound, please keep that in mind as I cannot wait until I'm done with this review so that I can change the strings to newer Worth Brown strings. I actually prefer re-entrant tuning on my sopranos and concerts, so I'll be switching this out as soon as this video is done. It may come strung low G, not sure, from the factory, because I end up buying most of my KoAlohas used at a discounted price, which is kind of what I did. Also, and because I bought it used, that's why there are strap buttons on it. Although I do put strap buttons on almost all of my ukuleles, this one came with those. So in these UkeGuide reviews, they are long-winded, and I don't apologize for that at all because you have the power of the internet in your hands. And at the bottom of your screen, there are chapters that you can scroll to parts of this review that are of interest to you. And if things aren't of interest, just skip ahead. You can also find a list of those in the description below, but sometimes it's easier just to scroll through and check out those chapters. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the subjective issues of this instrument, then I'll talk about the specifications for the instrument, and then I'll wrap it up with a summary and then an overall rating for the instrument. So let's begin. These are available. The list price is $530, but you can generally find them on the street for about $450, maybe a few dollars more than that. And occasionally you'll find a really good deal on a used one like I did. And this is a late model, as you'd say. It's November, so this one is celebrating 2 years. And I've had it for about, I don't know, maybe 5 months. It's been in my collection of my personal ukuleles that I've wanted to review. But when I have an ukulele to review that's sent by a company, I make sure that that gets bumped ahead of instruments that I buy myself. So cost, $450 generally. Now, that is not cheap, but a full KoAloha is going to be over $1,000. A KoAloha from Hawaii. So you can see $450 versus over $1,000. Yeah, for a $600 savings, if you like KoAloha, this is a much less expensive way to get into it. Of course, it is acacia rather than koa. Koa is a species of acacia, but it only grows on Hawaii, whereas acacia itself grows all over the world. So it has different properties, especially koa that's grown in Hawaii has different properties. Personally, we'll get to this in sound quality, I think acacia is darker than koa. Koa has a lightness to it, but that's just my opinion, and I need to play and own some more koa instruments. I have a number of acacia, and I feel like universally that's the case of the acacias I play, so I'm looking forward to trying more koa instruments in the future. Now, in terms of value, I think the price is the value ultimately. I don't think it's a bargain. Now, again, if you can compare it to a over $1,000 koa instrument, perhaps it is a huge bargain, but in the world of ukulele, I think the price is the bargain. I don't think it's overpriced necessarily for what it is, especially being an American company located in Hawaii. Costs are high to produce. And if you don't know about the Opio models, ultimately, KoAloha set up a factory in Thailand that mirrored their own factory back in Hawaii. So they set it up. The special machine that cuts the frets that Pops created, Pops is the creator of the KoAloha brand, and his sons now run the entire operation. But that same cutting fret machine, there are only two in the world. One is in Hawaii and the other is in Thailand. And then that company that makes the Opios now also makes their own brand called Rebel in the time that they're not producing ukuleles for KoAloha. So it's a pretty cool story. So you're not dealing with just the average company just placing an order to China of something that they already make or whatever and importing them. They actually set up the entire work. So there is going to be a price difference there. So I think it's right at the value. The build quality is to KoAloha standards. That's the whole point. So as you look on the outside, the finish is this sort of semi-gloss finish. It's gorgeous. The wood is pretty with that nice acacia striping. Um, you look over it, no problems whatsoever. It's what you'd expect. It's what you'd hope for a instrument that costs this level of money. Although there are instruments that cost plenty more. I know if I say to my students that I'm holding a $450 ukulele, they sort of lose their minds. Yet if you hold a $2,000 guitar, they wouldn't lose their minds. Or you hold a $5,000 tuba, it doesn't blow their minds. So it's just funny that we get into this idea that all ukuleles should be $60, and they're not. And you do get more for what you pay for at this price range, just in terms of sound and playability and feel. And also, actually, resale value generally is going to hold a little better. Although, generally I always say expect 65% of new on a used instrument just as a starting point. And if you get more than that, then you can sort of be happy. So build quality, really good. But one of the things I love to do is I love to look on the inside of ukulele, and this one is special. So let's go into the Musubi sound hole. That's what that shape is called, and see what's going on. Look at the inside of a KoAloha Opio long neck soprano. Here we go. All right, just kind of pulling all the way back, taking a look on the inside. A couple things that you're going to notice. Number one, there's a very thin strip connecting the two halves of the back, and this is a solid acacia instrument. And you'll see that same strip, thin strip, connects the top. There are no vertical bracings there. There is a bridge plate that runs most of the length of the ukulele. There is no kerfing whatsoever. Now if I back up a little further here, you can see the famed KoAloha Una brace, that singular brace that holds the instrument together, and they even will demonstrate this by having people stand on a model at the factory and sometimes at NAMM. So that's what it looks like on the inside. It's very clean, maybe a little glue here and there, but different construction than pretty much any other ukulele manufacturer. Now let's take a look at the upper bout. All right, here we are. Now as you can see, you've got that same lack of kerfing. You do have a brace right here that runs across the top of the ukulele. So there are really two horizontal braces on the ukulele, not counting the bridge plate. One of the neat things you can see is how KoAloha stamps now the date of an ukulele, so you know exactly when it was made. So this one was made 2 years ago, which is kind of fun to see. And just, I mean, it's really clean. There's a measuring mark, but it's also so, I'm not going to say simple, but such a different design than other companies that it almost looks like too good to be true. But that's what it looks like on the inside of a KoAloha, and in particular a KoAloha Opio long neck soprano. All right, so we're back. You aren't going to see any other ukulele like this, and if you do, it's just because they built it wrong. KoAloha, again, they don't use any extra kerfing on the inside. They use minimal bracing on the inside. The focus is that unibrace, and it's fun to see. So you get super thin soundboard and super resonance because you have so little things going on inside, which ends up creating that KoAloha sound, which is so unique. If you hear a KoAloha being played, you generally know it's a KoAloha, even with just a little bit of exposure to the instruments and the different K models that are out there. All right, let's talk about appearance. It is kind of plain. So as you look at it from a distance, it's pretty plain. But as you get a little closer, there are a couple things that stand out. So first of all, you get the KoAloha headstock with that crown on it. That is quintessential KoAloha. A couple years ago, they changed this. Opios used to say the word Opio on them. I have a Sapele tenor that has the word Opio stamped there, and people didn't like that. They didn't like it having been announced that they were playing a cheaper version of an instrument. So KoAloha listened to that. So now when you buy a KoAloha instrument, whether it is a KoAloha Opio, or a KoAlana, which is their laminate line, they all have the KoAloha symbol like that on them at the very top. The red labels and black labels, which are the custom order ones, have a little more fancy stuff going on there. And it only says differently when you read the label on the side, you'll say made in Thailand. That can make it tricky for some buyers, because I know people that have said, I bought a KoAloha for $500. And you say, well, what does the label say in it? And they say, it says KoAloha. And in the old times, it didn't do that. You say, well, what does it say made in? They go, made in Thailand. Yeah, you just bought an Opio. You bought a very good ukulele, but it's not a Hawaiian-made KoAloha. So just keep that in mind. So you also get the Sapele fretboard and Sapele bridge. The bridge is kind of cool. Can you see that it says KoAloha on there? I'll put in the light there. I like that too. That's a neat touch. So it has some nice touches. The maple little dots on the side there, or not on the side, but on the fretboard. There are a lot of neat little things here. So the appearance is cool and there's little features, but overall, from a distance, it's pretty plain. There's no fancy rosette, no side sound port, no binding, no purfling. It's just the instrument. And again, that's part of what makes KoAloha a KoAloha. Although they certainly do have fancier things when you get the black label, red label, or even Pop's Pineapple Sunday models that he makes. Now, in terms of availability, these are available, but they're not available all the time. So they do come in and are restocked regularly. They are on the market new from time to time. Right now, as I'm looking, I don't see any out there at any of the vendors that carry KoAloha. I don't even see any used on any of the forums or on Reverb right now, but they pop up from time to time. And used, you can sometimes get them for a pretty good deal as well. So if you're interested in one of these, either they'll be coming in or just watch the used market in various places, and you can probably get into one at even a little bit more of a discount. Now let's talk about sound quality. Again, we're dealing with old strings, so again, it's going to change a little bit with newer strings, but it's still a good sound. And it can be super loud the way that it's built. It is a darker tone. There's still really good sustain. It's not as loud or as bright as a KoA KoAloha, and I think that's to be expected. And I do have a solid KoA concert KoAloha, and when I play that, again, that has more surface area than the soprano long neck, but still, the difference is quite amazing in terms of brightness and even more bark that it has. So it's very good sound quality, good sustain. It just tends to be a little darker than I think the KoA models. Now, one of the things I like to do is I like to use an app to let you see what I'm hearing. And it's called Tonal Energy Tuner. And it will show you what's happening in the sound spectrum as I play the chord and what happens with sustain. All right, so let's do that now. I'm going to play the C chord, and you'll see what's happening as I play. And generally what you see there again is that the whole spectrum lights up as you strum, but then as the sustain goes, it's more on the low end where that sustain is. Now that's also partially true because of the low G. That is not escaping me that that's part of the factor of why it sounds like it does, but the higher sounds are not sparkling and escaping out even with fluorocarbon strings on there. So again, old strings, G, low G tuning. Once I switch it around, this might be a completely different instrument, but I still think that the Acacia tends to be darker than a KoA model of the same exact specifications. Now, speaking of that word specifications, let's go over them. It is a soprano body with a concert neck, so its scale length is a concert. The scale length is 15.125 inches, just over 15 inches, with 17 frets and like 13 and a half to the body. You can see you get the 12th fret, 13th fret, halfway through, and then the 14th is on the body. So that's halfway. There are side position markers, if you can see those there. The body is a traditional double bout. The soundboard is solid acacia. The back and sides are solid acacia. The fretboard is sapele, and it is a bound fretboard. That's something else that's really nice. You generally won't get sharp fret ends with a KoAloha unless something's really wrong, because they do bind the sides of the fretboard. The bridge is sapele as well, says KoAloha on it, and is a tie bar bridge. It does not have a radius fretboard, and sometimes I wonder how amazing would it be if KoAloha integrated a radius fretboard on top of everything else that they do. The nut and saddle are tusk. It does not have a compensated saddle. So if you think that an instrument has to have a compensated saddle to be good, just keep in mind that a number of the K brands do not use compensated saddles. The finish is a semi-gloss. It looks beautiful, easy to clean, feels good in the hands. The overall length is 22 ounces from the top of the crown to the bottom of the instrument, and it weighs 15.6 ounces. It has friction tuners, and that might be a point of contention for some players. They work great. And if they loosen, you just tighten the screw a little bit. However, they are more fiddly than geared tuners. If you don't like these and you buy one of these, you can, for example, upgrade them to Goto ukulele planetary tuners, which act like a geared tuner but look like a friction tuner. They do cost quite a bit. I think they're about $65 or $70 a set. The cheapest place I found to buy them, if you want to do the work yourself, is the ukulele site. They will sell you those tuners and ship them out to you for about as less expensive as I've found. Even eBay is not as inexpensive. So just so you know, there are some solutions if you don't like these tuners and you want to keep the look. The action at the first fret here is less than 0.25 millimeters. And again, this is a used instrument. So I cannot tell you that your KoAloha coming from KoAloha will have really low action there. I think this one was adjusted for the playing style of the previous owner, and I have no problem with that because, number one, it's super playable, and number two, there is no buzzing as a result of that. The action at the 12th fret is 2.25 millimeters, so really low action on this one. The nut width is 36.18 millimeters, and that's pretty wide for a soprano or concert. But here's the catch. That is mainly to compensate for the bound edge on the fretboard. So as a result, KoAloha has string spacing that's equal to most 35 millimeter import ukuleles. And for some reason, we don't complain about that a lot, although we do complain about import ukuleles not having enough space. We don't say the same about KoAloha generally. So just so you know, the string spacing between strings at the first fret is 8.74 millimeters, which is pretty standard for an import ukulele, with string spacing of 28.42 G to A. So just keep that in mind as you consider the KoAloha. If you don't like 35 millimeter spacing on, for example, a Kala or something, well, keep that in mind that that's ultimately what you're going to get with a more expensive KoAloha. The depth of the instrument, the neck at the third fret, is 19.56 millimeters. So KoAloha has a C-shaped neck, but it's a very narrow C, and it's quite comfortable to play. And there's a reason why people like that neck feel on these instruments. I mean, overall, it's just so incredibly well put together, as you'd expect for a $450 instrument, or you'd expect for a more than $1,000 instrument if you got a full KoAloha. All right, with all the specifications gone over, let's do the summary for the instrument. Now, ultimately, not everybody can go out and buy a KoAloha instrument. Not everybody can go out and spend more than $1,000 on an ukulele. And in fact, if anything, Amazon shows us that a lot of people are looking for $60 ukuleles. Now, there are a number of players that will say, I love my $60 ukulele, but I'm ready for something more serious. I'd like something with a little more legacy. And they'll look at the $1,000 KoAlohas, Kanaleas, Kamakas, and say, I can't afford that. KoAloha's answer to that is the Opio that are made in Thailand. Makes sense. And they build these things with KoAloha's standard build in mind, enough so that they actually made a plant in Thailand, built a plant in Thailand to create these like they make them in Hawaii. So what you get when you buy one of these is you get a wonderful instrument with all the ergonomics of a KoAloha, full KoAloha, with a slightly different sound. I'd say probably 90% of the sound of a KoAloha. And I will say that a full KoAloha is cleaner sounding and even more loud, and that the acacias tend to be a little bit darker and a little more muted, but still incredible instruments. So if you're looking for a mid-range instrument that's out of the entry-level sort of laminate ukuleles, and you're not ready yet to commit to the full $1,000 plus K models, well, the KoAloha Opio is one of the rare instruments that exists in that middle price point of $500 to $1,000 and is definitely worth checking out. Now, that said, there are some other solid acacia models out there that are also worth looking at too. Still, incredible instrument. That warranty, that if anything goes wrong with the build, KoAloha will stand behind the product, is absolutely worth it. I had to use it on my own Koa model after I bought it used, and they cover that warranty even if it's used. They're a company that seems to treat its customers right, seems to treat its employees right, seems to have that aloha spirit, very giving and warm and friendly company. So with that in mind, what would I rate this? Knowing that the Koa models exist, this has to be one notch below. And again, also the pricing is going to keep it out of the hands of a number of people. There are a lot of people that won't even consider this instrument too being in that $450 range. And that's too bad because it's, again, a really nice instrument and you can find them used for less than that. So those two factors in mind, the fact that the Koa models exist, and I know that they sound just that much better, and the fact that the price may keep some people away. This is 4.5 out of 5 ukuleles. And if you wanted to insist that it be a 5, I wouldn't argue with you. If you insisted that the price was enough to knock it down to a 4 because there are other acacia models, I wouldn't argue with you. But I think 4.5 tells you that it's a pretty safe bet if you want to spend that much on an ukulele. Great sound, looks great, functions great, plays great. What's not to like there? All right, thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you're having a great day, and I will be back soon with some more uke stuff for you.